Hey there, I'm Mike Dunn with Gaming Trend, and we're here at Gen Con 2023, and I've got Dave Beck here from Paverson Games to talk about their follow-up to Distilled, a big favorite of ours at Gaming Trend. And we earlier this week, we talked on the podcast about how excited we were to see this next game, Luthier, The Art of the Instrument. Dave, this is the first I've seen anything of this.
First, most anybody has seen any of it.
But tell us what's going on here.
Yeah. So so again, thanks so much. This is our follow-up, like you said. Just like with Distilled, it's all about that rich connection between theme and mechanics. Instead of making whiskey and gin and vodka, now you're making oboes and violins and even a pipe organ, if you will. And you're making them for patrons. This game is set in the golden age of classical music. You are the head of a household, a luthier, an instrument maker, where you, as well as your family, are working in the workshop to craft instruments for patrons. Patrons like Beethoven, Bach, and Mozart, but also nobles and performers as well. Now, this is going to be coming to Kickstarter in summer of 2024, so probably June, July of 2024. What you see before you is a complete prototype. In fact, what you're going to see is some of it looks somewhat finished and some of it looks not at all.
Right.
And that's okay. The gameplay is pretty much finished, and we're now really investing a lot of time and energy into the graphic design and the artwork. Vincent Dutrait's going to be doing pretty much all the artwork in the game, as well as a second artist that's going to be designing the main board, which is sketches right in front of me here, you see, too.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
Now,
oh, wow. That's super cool.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about kind of what you see here, but essentially what we have is the main mechanic. It's something that's a little bit new. It's hidden bidding worker placement. So I have a family. My family consists in this game represented by these discs. I myself, the master, head of the household, is a skill level of 5. But I also have other family members, like this one that might be my kid that started yesterday in my workshop as a skill level of 1. I'm sending them out all around this orchestra hall, right, this opera house, sending them perhaps to pick up new plans for instruments, or perhaps I'm trying to achieve and attract new patrons, or maybe I just need to earn some money and I need to do performance or maybe a quick repair of an instrument too. But the ticket here is that when I send these out to these different locations, that's the first part of the round where I'm placing these workers and I'm placing them face down. Other people at the table don't know who I'm sending. And so what's going to happen, result, is that I'm going to be placing workers and other people are as well. After we've all planned in the planning phase, we're then going to resolve a location. We're going to take that and we're going to lay them down one at a time in front of us, and we're going to flip them over and see what happens. So yellow was there first. Yellow's going to get their first try at that place. And then we're going to go on from there. Except, wait a minute, my number 4 worker is more skilled than number 3, which means they jump to the front of the line. Okay? And of course, this one is going to sadly go to the back as well. So what this means is that I, as my number 4 worker, I prioritize that location, which means I'm going to get first choice. All locations have multiple options to do at each place. So I might get a patron, I might get some money, and if I send one of my best, most skilled workers, I'm getting a bonus at every single location on the board. 5 here, as well as 2 at my main board of my workers. I'm going to be able to get a bonus on top of that. So I need to really think about where I'm sending my best workers because I'm going to get some sort of result. Now, let's say I did attract Beethoven. I'm going to send Beethoven, bring Beethoven back to my my workshop. Beethoven wants certain things. He might want a stringed instrument and a piano and keyboard instrument, or piano, percussion and keyboard instrument. Well, this is where I craft my instruments. Just like Distilled, where I have my washback, I'm going to be making instruments. I'm going to flip over the worker there to perform the action. I'm going to pay the cost, the wood, to be able to then rough that instrument out and send it over. Yep, I'm going to pay it from there for my resources and send it over to my finishing bench. There, I'm going to, if I had a worker there, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to finish this instrument. The first thing I'm going to do is again, all prototype here, but I'm going to place my instrument into the orchestra, and I'm going to take over the first chair. So again, in the location here, there's going to be the orchestra where we're starting to fill this orchestra with instruments. When people repair or perform, they're going to place things in the orchestra as well. But the instruments, when I craft an instrument, I trump that location. I take first chair. I own it. So there's a little bit, just a little bit of area control as well in the game too. Okay? It doesn't stop there, because I've made Beethoven happy. I then reset his patience cube because he gives me gifts at the start of each round. But if it gets to the end, I lose him. So I've just made him happy again. But also, if it's the final thing he wants, I'm flipping Beethoven over, tucking him under my board, and I now have an unlocked persistent power for the rest of the game that nobody else has, because he's my lifetime patron, if you will. So again, like I said, we can do performances where we're actually going to roll dice, and whatever the result we get, that's going to earn us more money. We can craft more instruments, we can repair instruments, and we can place those things into our orchestra. And then finally, we're also going to be able to move up tracks. So if I wanted better dice rolls, then I can move up this track to be able to do better at performing. Or if I want to craft instruments faster, repair better, I can move up the craft skill track. So there's multiple avenues here, which is why this is a little heavier game. It's about a 3-5. And so you're playing over 6 rounds. Your family grows over the course of the game from 3 to 5 family members. And whoever has the most points at the end is going to be the master luthier and the winner of the game.
Awesome. Wow. So like just off the top of my head, I'm loving there's a lot more possibilities for player friction.
Yeah.
So that it's like, I feel like that we had some of that in Distilled, but it was more kind of secondary.
Exactly.
But this feels like much more competitive.
It is. Because, the instruments that are out, the plans that are out, if I'm there first, I'm grabbing what I want. And if you wanted that, sorry, you should have prioritized. You should have sent your best worker. And I didn't talk about the fact that we have apprentices that you can hire that are one-time bonuses. So that turns a 1 into a 2, or a 4 into a 5, or a 5 into a 6. And so that's going to allow me to maybe beat you out at a certain place if I really want that person. I need to go there first and bring a posse with me, an entourage, to make sure I get the instrument that I want.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that really stood out to me is this idea of performing.
Yeah.
Like, I guess in Distilled, if there was an equivalent in Distilled, it would be like a drinking contest, right? Like the actual fruits of what you're making.
Yeah.
Coming into play and becoming a way to get even more stuff and continue building your engine.
Exactly. And what we found with this is that some people stay away from the performance because they don't want to roll dice. Right. They don't want to have any luck.
Right.
And that's fine. And we've designed it so that that's the case. If you want to stay away from that, you do not have to do that. But then we have others that lean into that, like, no, I love this. I'm going to push my luck and see how I do. Because if you really push it and you result, you're going to really increase the amount of money that you earn, the points that you get. Because at the end of the day, your patrons also sometimes will be okay with getting a performance or a repair as well. So there's definitely multiple avenues, multiple paths to victory here in this game. Definitely a lot more player interaction as well. Not only in the orchestra pit where we're trying to vie for location, but also in what we're trying to obtain in each row as well.
Awesome. And I can only imagine how many, I imagine you're pulling primarily from history instead of like creating character.
Everything is all historically accurate. Yeah. Vincent is illustrating over 30 different people from history. The Medici family, Beethoven, Paganini, who's a famous violin virtuoso. So we're really doing our research. I've hired a musicologist as a consultant, so everything's historically accurate there, from the instruments to the patrons, as well as the luthiers. So the luthiers are also historically accurate individuals and families as well.
Okay, yeah, because you have Stradivari.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's probably the most famous violin maker, luthier, but there's many others, like Steinway and Sons, right? So the Steinway piano. Okay. So really excited about that. And really do it just like with Distilled, doing our research and having a true, authentic representation of the game, so players can learn a little bit while they're having fun as well.
Wow. Okay. I also see a lot of. And now, actually, let me step back.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the actual instrument creation, because I think that was one of the most fascinating things about Distilled.
Yep.
In that you had this card mechanic that I'd never really seen anywhere else. Yeah. That was so thematic.
Yep.
That really. I think that's what sold me on the game.
Totally. Yeah.
And then just the rest of it just kind of added to that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
what you kind of hinted at it,
Yeah.
found a bit, but let talk to me more about that.
Yeah, so this is a pretty simple example, but the violin is a smaller instrument, so it doesn't require as many resources. There's 3 different types of materials that you can work with in the game. You've got wood, of course, if you're making these wooden instruments. You've also got animal parts. So that's cat gut. So strings used to be made out of cat gut. Or perhaps if I'm working on a keyboard, those were made out of bone or ivory. So animal is kind of a broad category there.
Right.
And then the third ingredient or resource is metal. So that's usually brass going into making a trombone, right? Yeah, exactly. So you've got those 3. It's somewhat simplified in the sense that you always have 2 categories. You've got your roughing side, where you're literally roughing out that instrument, cutting the silhouette of the violin, right?
Okay.
And then you move that over in the process to your finishing bench, and that's going to require additional types of resources. So for instance, we've tried to keep this thematic in the sense that the violin, of course, does not require any animal gut when you're roughing it out, but to finish it, to string the strings properly, that's where the animal parts come in.
Right.
So each of the instruments have different requirements. This natural horn here has nothing but metal. Whoops. That's nothing but metal in that one, of course, because we're just going to be adding lots of different types of metal to it in the beginning and the end. And then we've done the same thing with the repairs as well. When you're repairing an instrument, oftentimes, again, you might repair brass and woodwinds, or maybe you're repairing a string. We've got some of those same types of materials that you're being asked to do, just on a smaller scale.
So is there like kind of a randomizing element in that creation?
Not in this one.
Fixing one?
Not in this one. In this one, it's very straightforward. The randomized element here is going to be found either in the dice, or quite honestly, it's when you're placing these workers, because again, you start the game with 3. You have 7 spots to choose from, 5 on the board, 2 on your own board. You have 3 workers, so you're not going to be able to do everything. Right. By the end of the game, you do have 5, so you probably can go to most places that you need to, but everybody else does too. One location is just to determine play order, because in this game, it's important to be going first if you want to get somewhere first and be sure you've got that. So that randomization is more of it's a kind of a strategic, where do I want to place something? I need to be ready for other people to place something there too, and maybe take it from me, and what is going to be my backup plan at that location as well.
Yeah, I was trying to... When I was trying to kind of suss out what the game might have, before I knew any of this, like I was wondering, is it going to be something like? Because I also thought it was only string instruments. Because
Luthier,
Luthier,
totally.
But I like the way that you've expanded it out to include others. But I was thinking, oh, maybe there's like some kind of lacquer or something like that might change the tone of the instrument. Because
it's a major part of.
It's been a minute since I was in high school band, but I do remember like every instrument just plays differently, and you can really change how an instrument sounds just by changing out different pieces of it.
Yeah, we thought about that too, definitely and that's something I think we'll probably be thinking about with expansions down the road as well, where that finish, you're exactly right. Like Stradivari was known for his instruments, and many people, the theory is it was actually the lacquer that he used that is what gave the tone to that wood, to the instrument. Who knows if that's true or not?
Or the type of wood, right?
Or the type of wood. Yeah, so there's lots of, and I should say, I want to step back for a second and mention, I hadn't talked about this yet, so I'm co-designing this. The other designer, Abe Burson, he worked on this for years. He's a musician himself. His game originally was more about modern age luthiery, making just mainly guitars and other string instruments, and he had multiple different types of wood, so that idea is very important. So it's been a really neat experience working with him, taking what he had, us kind of infusing some things that we knew we wanted to see as well, to make that as thematic as possible.
And I imagine if this is successful, then you could potentially expand into other eras of instrument making.
Maybe.
I always get ahead of everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
This looks great. This looks fantastic. I can't wait to give it a shot. Like I said, big fan of Distilled.
Yeah.
This has a lot of similar aspects, but a lot of new stuff too. And again, I love that additional player interaction that you're throwing in here.
Thanks.
This is coming out in Kickstarter next summer?
Yep, next summer, probably around June-ish will be our Kickstarter. I can't remember if I mentioned, we're pretty much done with gameplay. tweaking some things here and there. Really, it's all about art and graphic design now, like pedal to the metal with that, and really looking then to get this into previewers' hands and in the new year.
Excellent. Yeah, and I imagine we'll be hearing about this game quite a bit.
Yep.
As we lead into summer, into convention season.
Oh yeah, for sure. We will be at PAX U this year.
Excellent.
And we will have playable games of the game. So that's a good opportunity for people if they want to try it.
Reserve a slot.
Exactly.
You need to reserve a slot for me. Well, this is awesome. This is Luthier, the art of the instrument. Keep your eyes peeled on Gaming Trend for news coming into the future. And hopefully we'll end up with one of those preview copies at the beginning of the year and give you even more in-depth coverage of it. Thanks again, Dave.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.